and Orange Julius in Singapore. He was also Group Marketing Manager at the Hourglass Limited, Asia's largest watch distributor and retailer, and also one-time franchisor of Milano Pizza. He's also held several marketing and sales management positions at American Express International. Friends, let's please welcome to the Philippines the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Asia-wide Franchise Consultants Pte Limited, Mr. Albert Kong. Albert, you take a seat. All right, I can't wait to start the discussion, but let me first introduce our final guest speaker, or guest this afternoon, and he heads what is considered the global leader for entrepreneurs, the United Franchise Group. The UFG offers a wide range of development services that has led affiliated companies to phenomenal growth with nearly 1,400 units in over 60 countries. The UFG franchise brands have also been awarded by Entrepreneur Magazine as leaders in their respective industries. He's an accomplished lecturer. Our first speaker has been named Ernst & Young's Florida Entrepreneur of the Year and Counselor International Person of the Year. In 2010, he was elevated to ASI's Power 50 list of the industry's most influential people. And yes, he is here with us this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for the Chief Executive Officer of the United Franchise Group, Ray Titus. A very good afternoon, gentlemen, and welcome to the Philippines. Too bad it's a bit rainy outside, but we promise you some better weather in the coming days. But then, of course, the mood is extremely excited in the country right now. Everyone is waiting to know how they can level up their companies, take it overseas, earn much more money for them, their shareholders, of course, for their employees and stakeholders. Now, we want to find out from you guys how we can do this successfully, because you've done this for many other companies as consultants and for your own companies as CEOs. I'm going to throw the first question, and Ray, I'm going to throw this to you. First question is, 11,000 islands, when do you know the time is right?
I think for every company that that question can be answered differently. For our company, we started internationally about 20 years ago, and we made a conscious decision to go outside the United States to a very, very small country that nobody would hear about any mistakes or any problems that we would have down the road, and figure it out before we went into some of the larger countries that were really glaring for us that we wanted to go to, but we needed to get over the language hurdles, the cultural differences, and distribution of products and equipment. So we did it in a step-by-step process. But our philosophy early on was that we were going to go there before they came here. And so we were aggressive in going outside the country.
Albert, same question, but let me tweak it somewhat to your experience. It's always a big debate in boardrooms among family members for family-owned companies. When is it time to go overseas? There's so much more to do locally. But when is the right time?
Right. Well, we look at several things, at least from my experience in the last 22 years. Oftentimes, when clients ask me, am I ready to go overseas? One of the first questions I'll ask them is, has any international prospect knocked on your doors? If they were, why? Did you ask them why? Of course, other things will be like, are you already quite established in your own country, which is Singapore? I mean, if you're struggling and you think that franchising is a quick way to make money because, overseas people aren't as experienced or knowledgeable or even educated on franchising, then I think it's the wrong step forward. I will let my other colleagues say some more.
Before I go to Datuk and to Andrew, let me just go back to Ray. Now, again, in your experience, explain that a little bit more. It's better to start out small so that you can contain the mistakes rather than be too aggressive and go into some big market. Tell us a bit more about that.
Our thoughts were that we needed to figure out the process internationally. The United States is a big country, and we had been coast and state, and so we needed to have a point person. You need to have somebody that's responsible for the operation and the growth and is committed to the area. But from our standpoint, it just seemed such a natural to go to the big country. But after we sat down and went through everything and looked at everything, we were much better off going to the smaller countries initially. Cutting teeth in those countries and learning by the mistakes that we made in those countries before we took some monster steps to India or Australia or some of the other big moves.
Yes, Albert.
If I may add to this, well, commonsensically, we'll tell franchisors to only want your baby to be thousands of miles away. Get there, the baby's gone. So we urge, our clients to go by Malaysia, maybe Indonesia, but not immediately go to Europe or whatever, because they need to learn to be a franchisor first. In spite of the best consultants you use and all the strategic planning, things will go wrong because it's another country, and they are not like you with a lot of years of experience already in that particular trade. So it's always good to have the franchisee nearby, so that like a young mother, you learn, then you know that, hey, babies cry like that because their diapers are wet, not because they're sick. So then when you have more children, more franchisees, you are more confident.
So start small and start somewhere nearby. Datuk and Andrew, the question I'll ask you is, what are the relevant questions you ask yourself to make sure that indeed you're ready to go overseas?
People going to overseas, you must really visualize yourself, whether you have the capacity to be going abroad, okay? And whether you are solid enough back home, whether you have been recognized by people, by your marketplace. Is there any more things to be done down back home? If you think you have already saturated the market back home, then you can go abroad. When you go abroad, then you must visualize with your eyes open, because there are a lot of things that you have to learn. You know the market over there, you must know the place over there, you must know the legalities of the activities of the guys over there, and first and foremost, whether you can find a good partner, or is your master franchisee or franchisee over a new host country.
Andrew, in the course of your research, you've seen companies fail, you've seen companies succeed overseas. I mean, those companies that do succeed, what is it, of course, you feel has helped them most?
David, I think there are of course, a large range of issues, but I think a lot of boxes that have to be ticked. But I really think the first box is, do you have a proven and profitable system in your domestic market? I mean, I think the reality is, and my colleague...
so if you're not doing well here, chances are you won't do well overseas.
Well, I'm sure, I have no doubt that's right. I mean, any international expansion is going to, there's a cost involved. There's a cost in terms of, there's a financial cost, there's a manpower cost. There's a diversion of time away from your domestic market. I do have a colleague who said, maybe this is not the encouraging message for a lot of people in the room, but I forget whether we say you need twice as much money, do you think you're going to need in 3 times as much time, or maybe it's the other way around. But a lot of mistakes are made when people go international expansion for ego purposes.
For ego purposes.
I think I can get a march on the competitor. There are a lot of very good reasons to go overseas, of course, but there are reasons not to go overseas. And I think in that list, the very first box to tick is your system proven? Is it profitable? Can it afford the diversion of finances and manpower to develop overseas markets?
Now, having said that, Andrew, I'm really curious about Andrew here because he's worked with both with governments and with the private sector all around the region. And I want to ask him, I'm sure you want to ask him, so just between us, what countries do you think will be the easiest countries to do business in right now? And later on I'll ask you countries to avoid.
Look, it's interesting. The IFA, the International Franchise Association, have just produced a list looking at GDP prospects over the next 12 months, financial economic stability, that sort of thing. I think Chile came up on top in that. In the top 8, Philippines was the only, I think, representative from Southeast Asia. Australia was there, US was second, Canada was there. Look, I'm a kid.